Okay, so this is a quick question brought to me by a friend connected to Dungeons and Dragons, and how they say, how do you know how to accurately lower a monster's CR rating? So I guess this is also along. This could also answer questions of like, why are my players so OP, or any discussion of overpowered characters is really an issue for the dungeon master, because the it doesn't players can have all kinds of magic items, players can have all kinds of special abilities. You can be really generous as a DM. The reason someone might call a D&D character overpowered, it's not really a fair term, because someone who maximizes the rules in D&D and is creative with how they build the character, there's nothing wrong with that. So it just puts more of a burden on the dungeon master to make sure he or she is developing that they are developing effective encounters and interactions. So there are a couple ways we can see our levels up and down. So let's make sure. CR means challenge rating, for those of you who don't know, and so that's is or an opponent is to on the part on a party. So let's say we've got a CR4 character, CR4 monster. That is supposed to be a healthy encounter that's moderately challenging, but not likely to end in death, for 4 players who are all level 4. So the first thing I do is I will adjust for the player expertise first. Um, I will say, are these players people who've been playing D&D for a long time, who are experienced with their characters, who know the ins and outs, and who have maximized? They've maximized their characters and know how to use all their abilities. That means that CR4 isn't probably going to be as challenging as it should be. And so I will beef it up a little bit, or I'll go to a CR5 monster instead. Um, so if I've got a bunch of new players who are still just trying to figure out the mechanics of the game, who don't really know how to select all their spells, they accidentally do, thaumaturgy mending, and these things that don't have as much combat thing, and are great for role play, but if you don't know how to use them, that kind of thing. If there are new players who are still figuring out their abilities, the CR4 rating could end in death. It could end badly and sadly for a few of them, because they just don't know how to maximize their characters with each other or individually. And so I might bump it down a little bit, or say that the creature looks a little sickly, and I'll reduce hit points by a bit. So those are the first steps I'll do. The next thing I'll do is to adjust for is if you have more than 4 or less than 4 people, you can make kind of the same adjustment. If you've got an extra player around the table, well, that's going to be consistently more damage every turn. So you do want to have a stronger monster. And if likewise, if you only have 2 players, you can run an encounter, and you could use but you might not want to use a CR4 for 2 players, because that's likely to kill them, and pretty quickly, because of the just the number of hits balance. So the alternative, so there are a couple ways you can deal with that. You could just take that stat block for that character and remove one of its special abilities, or cut its hit points by 5%, or more. If you want it, and you can decrease the armor class, and say it says it's got natural hide armor of AC 15. Say, well, it's this one for some reason. If you want to build it into the story, it's not in its favored terrain where it's usually found, so its hide armor didn't grow as strong as it usually does according to the monster manual, if you need that kind of rationale in the story. And so it's got an AC of 13. It's just easier to hit. These are adjustments you can make within the story fairly easily as a DM, to just balance the encounter, even if it feels like you're balancing on the fly. It's better to make those decisions at the start of the encounter, because I know some DMs will recommend fudging dice rolls and adjusting halfway through, but I like making those decisions at the top of the encounter. And if my players die, still they die, or I bring in, there are other story elements we can talk about. But since we're focused on how do we accurately lower or raise a CR rating to meet the party, so we have first adjust to the actual player experiences or levels of experience, adjust to the number of players. Another thing we can do is shift our shift the way we tell the story, so we can use the descriptive part of a monster stat block if we want to have low level characters interact with a higher level creature. We can say, okay, we're going to use the descriptive portions of this creature to describe them and say their environment, but we're going to make them, instead of it being a CR8, we're going to scale it down. We're going to scale it down to CR4 by swapping stat blocks with a similar creature that's lower level. And that way, so they get the descriptive story element of, this is a really, oh wow, it's amazing, this one's, this is a really big character, or this is a massive encounter, but it's going to be balanced for the players. So they still get the excitement of not just killing a bunch of gnolls and goblins and lower level creatures when they're lower level. They get the excitement of something novel and interesting without the difficulty. So we just swap monster stat blocks with something of a CR4 nature that's in the same family roughly. So those are just some quick tips. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I do. I do make the same, these are similar adjustments you can make if you're playing not just with new people, but also with children, or something like that. You can make the same adjustments based on the, again, experience level, number of people around the table. That you want to keep it in mind. Alternatively, the other thing you can do, and some people, you can find encounter generators and all that, but the other thing you can do is make it so that the encounter doesn't necessarily have to be fully combat oriented, and you can use the story to say, well, at this point, if the creature gets down to 50%, don't forget they can run away, but also, like, maybe that's the point where they stop raging. They go beyond, they shift their mindset. So at that point, they try and stop the combat, or they change the tone. The other thing is you can have multiple monsters and the players stumble upon those monsters. So then it's a bit more story oriented and doesn't necessarily have to be combat. If it's one thing to roll in the and maybe I'm a little off topic now, but it's one thing to roll out a randomly generated encounter from Xanathar's Guide or the DM manual or something, and go, oh, they're going to fight 2 trolls. Well, when they come in, and this is more story oriented, so we have shifted. If they're going to encounter 2 trolls, a lot of traditional, tabletop situations will be like, kill the trolls, right? But what do they see when they see the trolls, right? The standard thing is like, oh, you see trolls munching on raw pieces of cow that they found or something. One's got a big ham or leg, and whatnot. Alternatively, you could do a random encounter of 2 trolls. That is, you could say one's a kid, or one's the adult, the mom or pa troll, and then one's the kid troll. So that's one way to scale an encounter, so that you don't have 2 equally matched trolls of the CR, whatever the handbook says, something I should probably have memorized. Alternatively, you could have the characters roll up on 2 trolls walking in the forest, and the trolls are like a troll married couple bickering back and forth, with no desire to eat the party or attack them, but instead they want the party to do some sort of role playing out of marital counseling. Like, these are fun options to make high level CRs that increase suspense and have some texture to them and uniqueness and novelty to them, but make them less about, are my players capable of killing them, right? Because D&D is more than just a combat oriented game. So those are my quick tips. I decided to do this as a live stream because I'm getting better at playing with technology. So hopefully you had fun, enjoy. More to come. If you are interested in if you want to see me run encounters, check some of those other streams I have right now. We're starting to build more, but I've got one on the Ethereal campaign, Ethereal plane and an airship. And then another one is a Horde of the Dragon Queen from the cult perspective, where the players are trying to walk through some of the content of the Horde of the Dragon Queen module. But what would the cult be trying to do in preparation for, say, the attack on Greenest, that sort of thing. All right, have fun.